I was born 62 years ago in Embakasi in Nairobi. I grew up as a normal hearing boy. I went to normal schools. My father, my mother, my grandmother, all of them were working at the airport. So it means that at the time that I was being born and the time that I was growing up, I grew up with a lot of comfort. In 1960, life was very different. Right now, things are much better. At that time, to find a boy who was well-dressed, going to school and well-fed was not easy. I thank God that I grew up very comfortably since my parents were working at the airport. When I was a child, I always wanted to become a teacher. This is because I wanted to know things, and when a person came to me with a question, I always wanted to answer them. And this gave me a lot of respect. And I thought, being a teacher is the most important job. My uncle was a teacher, and he showed me the process of becoming a teacher. He gave me a letter to take to Nairobi. I took the letter and went to Nairobi. This was the first step that I took into achieving my dream of becoming a teacher. When I was in Form 4, I became sick, but it was just a normal headache. Also, I had some fever. So my parents told me that I'm going to feel well. They gave me some painkillers to sort out the pain. Later on, I became more sick. I was not eating at that time. I was only vomiting. That night, around 10 at night, I became severely sick. And I started to sing to help me get through the pain. I continued like that until 5 in the morning. When I woke up at around 6, I could not hear anything. I told my parents that I cannot hear. I told them to speak louder. My mother tried to shout, but I could not hear anything. So they called an ambulance and it took me to Kenyatta National Hospital. At Kenyatta National Hospital, I stayed there for a month. When they cleaned my ears, I could hear very well for 1 hour. And then after 1 hour, I became a completely deaf person. The doctor came again, tried to do some examination, and told me to stay in the hospital for another 1 month. So after 1 month, we went back home. But I went back home with 3 disabilities. One was deafness. I could not hear. The second one was my sense of balance. I couldn't walk straight. Because my sense of balance was destroyed as well. Also, my nerves were destroyed. I stayed at home for around 6 months and became strong. At that time, there was no high school for the deaf. There was no university for the deaf as well. There was no college that was accepting deaf people as well. If you became deaf in 1977, you had nowhere to go. All you could learn was carpentry, tailoring, and design. So at that time, there was no university admitting deaf people. I realized that my dream of becoming a teacher would just remain a dream. I used to go for checkups at Kenyatta National Hospital. One day, the doctor told me, "You are now in Form 4 and it will be hard for you to continue with school. Just go home and wait as I talk to one of the schools for the deaf and see if they can admit you. If they accept you, you can learn carpentry." I was quite shocked. After all those years of studying and working hard, all I could be was a carpenter. So I told my parents that I couldn't do that. I saw it was not possible and it gave me a lot of challenges. I told my parents that I'm going to search for another opportunity. So they told me to study online since we had a computer. Right now, things are much better because of technology. In the past, there was nothing like that. If you became a deaf person, you could not access a lot of things. You are all alone. To improve yourself, you had to read a lot of books or try to go to the public library. However, you had to pay for membership for around 6 months or a year. And this membership was not easy to get. You needed to be recommended by someone important to get the membership. If you came from a poor background and you do not know any important person, you could not access the library. I was lucky because I knew people who could assist me to pay for the library. I developed a big love for reading. So when I became deaf, I read a lot of books. I did a lot of research and gathered a lot of information. Those days, very few people had TVs. You could only get them in the police stations or maybe where the chief lived. But now you can get them anywhere. So we only had the radios and newspapers. Since I'm a deaf person, I could not listen to radios and we did not own a TV. So I could only get information through reading books and newspapers. I read so many books, around 2 to 3 big books in a week, and I got a lot of information from religion to science to history and social studies. Reading changed my life because through reading, I acquired a lot of information. I wanted to share the knowledge that I had, but how was I supposed to share the information if I cannot hear? When I tried talking to hearing people, they just called me Bobo. How was I supposed to share information to people who looked down on me? Time went by, and through so many challenges, I met deaf people after around 10 years of becoming a deaf person. I stayed alone without meeting other deaf people for 10 years. I thought I was the only deaf person who became deaf after being born. I thought there was no other person in the country who was born hearing then became deaf. When I met one deaf person in around 1996, I started to learn sign language. First of all, we must keep in mind that hearing people, for them to help the deaf, they must understand them. They must understand where the deaf stand. And they must understand the worldview of the deaf people because of the communication barrier. They must understand their society. They must understand what they value. They also need to understand the culture of the deaf people. They need to understand how they see the world. And also, the only way is first to learn their language, which is sign language. After they have learned sign language, they can learn the culture of the deaf community. When a deaf person sees that you have the passion to learn their language, they become open to you. And then you will be able to connect with the deaf people. We all grow through interaction and communication. We all need to connect to grow together.